If your hormones feel off, you don't need a prescription first. You need a reset of the ecosystem your hormones live in.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
Hey, Health Decoded listeners. Dr. Alessi here. Let me ask you a serious question. Are you tired of waiting until something goes wrong to finally see a doctor? At Alessi Functional Health, we take a different approach, the right approach. We believe true healthcare isn't about chasing symptoms. It's about preventing them in the first place. That's why we created the Alessi Total Care Program. This is a functional medicine-based membership that gives you proactive, personalized care year-round. You'll get access to comprehensive blood work and functional testing, custom doctor-grade nutraceuticals, deep discounts on labs, protocols, and follow-ups, as well as 24/7 direct access to your doctor, not just a 10-minute checkup that ends with another prescription. And here's the best part. As a Health Decoded listener, you'll get your first 3 months completely free when you sign up for an annual membership. That's on top of hundreds in savings already built into the program. This is your chance to take responsibility for your health and join a movement that's redefining what primary care should look like. Head on over to alessifunctionalhealth.com, click on our services tab, and go to Total Care. Learn more about this program and claim your exclusive podcast listener offer. Your health is your greatest asset. Let's protect it proactively. Welcome back to another episode of Health Decoded. I am your host, Dr. Alessi.
And your co-host, Matt Tack.
Great to see you, my friend, as always.
Always good to see your lovely face, my brother.
I love what we're doing here, man. I love the feedback we've been getting has been really good. We just had a patient the other day in the office came in and was like, man, I listened to the podcast and now I'm doing, he's like, now I'm doing these things for my gut and I'm feeling so much better. I was like, that's the whole point, man. That's why we're doing this. We're not making money on this. We're just giving valuable information for people that they don't know. A lot of people just don't know these basic things about, what it means to really be healthy. And so I think we've gotten to a place in this country where health is not what they tell you it is. It's, it's totally different. And that's what we're trying to disrupt here with this episode and ultimately with the show.
On the positive note, with this podcast is, our main theme and anthem is your health is in your hands. And I think, there is becoming a trending mechanism where people are taking things seriously, right? Hey, I'm not getting the right information from my doctors. I'm not getting the right information. It's very reactive care. And, the whole anthem in our podcast is to empower people to really take their health and put it in their hands and be asking better questions to get better answers.
That's right. We literally have a guide that we give patients in our office who are in our functional medicine program, and it's called the At-Home Doctor Kit Guide. And so it's like all these things, blood pressure cuffs, pulse oximeters, things that you should have at home, thermometers, right, to be able to stay ahead of things, CGMs, like we talked about last episode, testing yourself. That way you don't have to go to the doctor to get these routine things done. And now you have the knowledge of how to do that, right, and how to make educated choices. So the whole point is like you're your own doctor, and then if an emergency arises, seek emergent care. But ultimately, taking responsibility of your health. And so today we got a cool episode. This does build off of the last episode, so go back and listen to episode 19, and then we're doing these in succession so that it's kind of like a book, right? Like as you read a book, each chapter builds on the last. And so this whole concept here is that you're building a story of what health is, each system in the body, how they interrelate, and what ultimate health looks like. So today we're going to be talking about hormones and really how to fix your endocrine system naturally. And so, we're diving into something that literally affects everything in your body, but gets blamed on, it gets blamed. So you might think of hormones as people always think like, oh, estrogen, testosterone, maybe thyroid. But the truth is your entire life is governed by these powerful chemical messengers. And so what is the endocrine system? Your endocrine system is your body's internal messaging network. It's made of glands like your thyroid, which controls metabolism, your adrenal glands, which control our stress response, the pancreas, which controls blood sugar regulation, pituitary, which is basically the master gland, which has a down cascade that signals all the others, your ovaries or your testes, depending on your sex. These are for sex hormones. And then your pineal gland, which controls your sleep-wake cycle. And so these glands produce hormones that tell the other glands what to do and then tell your body what to do and when. However, hormones don't work in isolation. They are a symphony. And if one instrument is out of tune, the whole song is going to sound off. And the truth is, most people are walking around with hormone chaos and they really have no idea. So you don't have to be menopausal or have a diagnosed condition like PCOS to be affected by hormone dysfunction. And these are the things. Here's what it might look like: chronic fatigue after 8 hours of sleep, weight gain, brain fog, irregular menstrual cycles in females, low libido or that feeling of disconnection, feeling wired at night and then anxious during the day, burnout, which a lot of people have experienced. And so none of this is normal, but it is common, right? And there's a big difference between those two things. So this episode isn't just about estrogen or testosterone. It's about how your entire life is impacted by your hormones and how they are running the show in the background. So the good news is that there's always natural and effective science-backed ways to repair hormones from chaos at the root. And we're going to unpack a lot of that in this episode. So we're going to start off here with basically, what are the big three, right? Let's get into the big three hormones that run your life. And so if I could get every patient to understand just three hormones and how they interact, we would eliminate 80% of the confusion around fatigue, mood swings, stubborn weight gain, poor sleep, and even infertility. And so now let's break those down. The first one, cortisol, the stress commander, we call it, right? This is produced by your adrenal glands. Cortisol is your body's main stress hormone. We have dove into this in a previous episode, but basically it's supposed to follow a natural rhythm. It's high in the morning when you wake up, right? That alertness. And then it gradually tapers off throughout the day to hit its lowest point at night so that you can go to sleep. But here's what happens with modern life. With stress, undereating, overtraining, constant stimulation, cortisol will stay chronically elevated and gets completely dysregulated. So too much cortisol over time is going to lead to insulin resistance, thyroid suppression, poor sleep, abdominal fat storage, and muscle breakdown. Eventually, your adrenals can get burnt out, and then that leaves you flatlined, where you're wired, but you're tired. And so number two, insulin. This is the blood sugar boss. Insulin is created by the pancreas, and it tells your cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream after eating. In a healthy system, insulin rises after a meal, and then blood sugar comes down, and everything resets. But when you're eating too frequently, or you're overeating processed carbohydrates, or if you live in a chronic stress state, you develop insulin resistance. Go back to episode 19. We talk a lot more about this. So what insulin resistance means is your cells stop responding to insulin. Sugar builds up in the blood, and your body starts to store fat like crazy, especially around the belly. This is really the gateway to metabolic dysfunction, prediabetes, fatty liver, even dementia. There's a quote from the Nature Reviews of Endocrinology in 2020. Insulin resistance is a key factor in the development of both metabolic and cognitive disorders. So it's not only just a metabolic thing, it affects your brain as well. And the third of the big three is your thyroid hormones, which is basically the master of your metabolism. Your thyroid gland is located in your neck, and it controls the speed of every system in your body. Think of it like a thermostat for your metabolism. The main thyroid hormones are things like TSH, which is the brain signal, the T4, which is inactive thyroid hormone that needs to then be converted to T3, which is the active form that actually goes to work. And so if you're low on thyroid hormones, or your body's not converting T4 to T3 properly, you'll feel like you're trying to walk, but you're moving through mud, right? And so those symptoms of low thyroid or hypothyroid can be weight gain, constipation, depression, hair loss, cold hands and feet. That's a big one. That's a real big red flag. And then low energy. And so there's also an autoimmune component to this thyroid, like Hashimoto's disease, which is very common cause of hypothyroidism. Basically, this is when your body is attacking its own thyroid tissue. We discussed this in a previous episode as well. So how do all these connect, right? This is where it gets really interesting. These three hormones are constantly talking to each other. For example, high cortisol is going to lower your thyroid output. Insulin resistance makes thyroid receptors less responsive, and a poor thyroid slows down your ability to clear insulin. So chronic stress is going to spike cortisol, spike insulin, and eventually tank both. This is what we call a hormonal cascade. And it explains why so many people feel like they're doing everything right, but they still feel awful at the end of the day. So key takeaway here. If your energy, weight, sleep, or mental clarity are off, start by looking at cortisol, insulin, and thyroid. These are keystone messengers. And you don't treat them in isolation. We fix the environment they operate in, such as sleep, food, stress, toxins. They often will self-correct. That's the awesome part about functional medicine, is finding equilibrium. So now let's talk about how we test for these kind of things, right? And also like what symptoms we should be looking for. So let's keep on rolling.
Yeah. So building onto that, the root causes of your hormone imbalance is the question then you need to ask, right? So let's dive into what actually causes the hormonal chaos in the first place. So here's the truth: hormonal imbalance, definitely not random. And it's almost never purely genetic, which you need to know, right? It's driven by the environment your body is living in every single day. And if we can identify the root causes of that, we can reverse the dysfunction. So let's break it all down here. First, blood sugar dysregulation. What we talked about in episode 19, the hidden hormone sabotage. So if your blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing, your insulin stays high. And insulin just doesn't manage sugar. You need to know that. And it also directly influences a number of other different factors. Number one, estrogen. High insulin promotes estrogen dominance. Testosterone in both men and women. So women might not know this, but they have a distribution of testosterone and estrogen in their body. So excess insulin can throw this off balance. Cortisol, crashes in blood sugar stimulate cortisol spikes. And then your thyroid, the T3, T4, as Dr. Alessi just aforementioned, insulin resistance shows thyroid hormone conversion. So it's properly converting from that T4 to T3. And this is why people with prediabetes or even just sugar cravings often show up with hormonal imbalances completely across the board. So the bottom line here is you can't balance the hormones if your blood sugar is out of control. So hope you understand that. And let's dive a little bit more into what chronic stress does and the cortisol domino effect. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. Stress is not just emotional. Your body treats it differently. So think about it: work, deadlines, high intensity workouts, right? Under eating, toxin exposure, and poor sleep all has threats, whether indirectly or directly exposed, right? So when that happens, your adrenal pumps out cortisol to keep it going, right? But over time, the response becomes dysregulated. So, in no, adrenal dysfunction isn't pseudoscience. It's a direct measurable of that disruption in your body's ability to maintain stable cortisol rhythms. And think about that rhythm that you have. That cadence is the word we like to see. Do you have a cadence within your body? And it affects every other hormone downstream. So think about these: sleep issues, low progesterone, low testosterone, insulin resistance, and thyroid suppression, and what that can do to your body. It's a cascade that starts with stress and then ends in complete burnout. So another thing that we talked about, I think in episode 15 or 16, was this element of toxin overload. So the endocrine disruptor epidemic. We are bathing in chemicals that were never part of our biology. So BPA in plastics, personal care products, pesticides on our food, these compounds mimic or block the natural hormones. So what does that mean? They confuse the hormone receptors. They disrupt feedback loops. Those can be neural feedback loops, right? Burden the liver and the detox systems. And they also interfere with the reproductive function. We've heard that a lot. A lot of women, right, struggle with that. So even these small exposures over time, they do add up. And this is especially true in women with estrogen dominance or men with declining testosterone, which is a clearly epidemic on both sides. Here's a statistics from the Endocrine Reviews in 2015. I want to read this because it's really important. Is the endocrine disrupting chemicals are now considered a global threat to human health. Think about that. And it was a study done and published in 2015. So now, 9 years later, what is it producing? Poor gut health. The hormone detox bottleneck. If your gut does more than digest, your gut digests more than just digest food, right? Helps metabolize and excrete excess hormones. It produces neurotransmitters and hormone-like compounds and influences inflammation and immune response. So if you have these factors, it's likely because of poor gut. So bloating, constipation, irritable bowel syndrome, food sensitivities, and a histories of antibiotics. If you're constantly on antibiotics, you likely have poor gut health, right? So you likely have some level of gut dysbiosis, which means hormone detox slows down, and recirculating of estrogen or toxins makes systems worse. So as we like diving into the nutrient deficiencies that this might cause. So you can build hormones. You can't just build hormones out of thin air. So your body needs the micronutrients as a supplementation to produce a cadence within the hormonal factory in your body, right? So zinc for testosterone and immune regulation, right? Magnesium is another one we've talked about in prior episodes for adrenal and thyroid function. B vitamins, especially B6 and B12 for hormone synthesis and detox. Selenium, which converts, this one's important, it converts the T4 to the active T3 hormone. Iodine is critical for thyroid hormone production. Iron, which we get from food supply and need supplementation because low level means to poor oxygen delivery, and energy production, which is the building blocks for your cells, the mitochondria. So if you're low in these, your hormone production will suffer no matter how much hormone balancing supplements you take. So here's a case study. I love adding these in because it really shows what this looks like maybe for you or somebody you know. So let's take, for instance, a 38-year-old woman came in complaining of fatigue, heavy, painful periods, hair thinning, irritability, and poor sleep. She has seen multiple providers and was told her labs were quote unquote normal. But when we look deeper, her blood sugar level was unsustainable, high fasting insulin. Ferritin was low, which explained the hair and energy issues. Estrogen dominance was present, low progesterone ratio, and her thyroid labs were technically in range but sluggish, T3 conversion and high reverse T3. So after addressing her diet and supporting her adrenals, correcting the nutrients and improving detox, her symptoms dramatically improved. And this is what happens when you treat the root, not just the hormone levels on a lab test, right? So here's another study done by the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism in 2017. So environmental and nutritional factors play a larger role in hormonal disorders than genetics alone. So in other words, you are not doomed by your DNA. Your daily environment is what shapes your hormone dysfunction. So the key takeaway here, if your hormones feel off, you don't need a prescription first. You need a reset of the ecosystem your hormones live in. So how do you do this? You fix your blood sugar, you lower your stress or have a managed environment, which you can outsource stress, which we're doing actually a challenge right now, which allows you to actually use a stress management tool, right? Typically that's done through breathing exercises for 5 minutes a day, right? Very easy stuff. Lower your environment, right? There's detox tools that we use, but it's being more conscious of your storyboard or your food. Like, what are you putting in your mouth that ultimately is going to impact your hormones? Heal your gut. There's a number of ways we just aforementioned of how you can do that. Rebuild your nutrient base with micronutrients and aided supplements. So do that and commit to it for 100 days. Anything you can do for 100 days, I guarantee you feel the change and you're better than majority of the people out there. So your body needs this. So now let's get into the testing and how we specifically nail down where you may be struggling with these hormone imbalances. But first, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode of Health Decoded is brought to you by Authentic Nutrition, the brand redefining what it means to fuel your body the right way. At Authentic Nutrition, they believe that what you put into your body matters. That's why every single product is crafted with clean, premium ingredients and dosed with maximum efficacy to ensure you're not just meeting your health goals, you're exceeding them. No fillers, no shortcuts, no gimmicks. Whether it's their advanced supplements for energy, recovery, or gut health, you can trust that what's on the label is exactly what's in the bottle. Authentic Nutrition delivers science-backed formulations that work as hard as you do. If you're tired of products that promise the world but don't deliver, it's time to make the switch to Authentic Nutrition. Elevate your health with transparency, quality, and results you can feel. Check them out today at AuthenticNutrition.com and use promo code Alessi15 to get 15% off. That's THENTIC Nutrition.com, promo code ALESSI15 to save 15% and take the first step toward real, lasting health. Authentic Nutrition, fuel your best self. Now back to the episode. All right, welcome back. Yeah, let's get into it, man. And let's talk about lab testing, what to look for, and honestly, what conventional medicine often misses. And so, the truth is, if you don't test, you're guessing, right? And even worse, if you test the wrong things or interpret them through the wrong lens, you're still stuck in the dark. And we see this constantly. Patients come into the office, they're frustrated, they're holding their lab results from their primary care doctors, and they told me everything was normal. Why do I feel like crap? And they're exhausted. They're gaining weight. They're anxious, moody. They're not sleeping. They just don't feel like themselves. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I'd retire, right? I don't feel like myself. So something's not normal. So where's the disconnect, right? And this is where conventional medicine versus functional medicine matters, because here's the deal. Conventional medicine, they run a very limited snapshot. We talked about this last episode, a snapshot. It's a very small take of, what's going on. And it's usually focused on a disease diagnosis, not a function. And the reason is, if they can diagnose it, they can prescribe something for it, they can get paid. That's just the system and how it works. So they're going to look at TSH for thyroid. They're going to look at total testosterone for men, estrogen for women, and then maybe fasting glucose. If those few things they look at fall within this very broad reference range, you're told you're fine. Sorry that you feel like crap. Bye. Right. And so it's not a functional approach. So in functional medicine, we ask totally different question. Is your body functioning optimally? Not just, are you sick yet? Right. And so we're looking for patterns, relationships between the systems, early signs of dysfunction, not just disease. And so these are the tests that we would run instead, right? And this is exactly what we do in our office for these certain kinds of things. A comprehensive hormone and metabolic panel. And so let's walk through some of the most valuable labs that give us real insight into hormone health. And I actually created for our functional medicine program what I call, cast the broadest net and look at everything, right? And it's a comprehensive panel that tests for all of the major markers that you're not going to get with conventional doc, but is going to give us the story of your body and how it's functioning. And so we include that as a free thing in our functional medicine program. And that's just part of how we operate. It's like, let's check everything and then let's go from there. And so first thing on that is a full thyroid panel. And the reason I say full is because it doesn't just stop at the TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. That's just a pituitary signaler, right? I want to know if the thyroid is producing and converting hormones properly. And I also want to know if the thyroid is attacking itself or if your body has signs of autoimmunity. So we look at TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, which is basically the inactive T3. It's kind of like the brake pedal form. And then two major things is TPO and TG, which is thyroglobulin antibodies. These are assessing for Hashimoto's autoimmunity. And so the red flag that we often catch is the TSH looks normal, but free T3 is low. That's basically subclinical hypothyroidism in action. It's on its way to be full blown. The next one we will look at a lot is the Dutch test, which is basically a dried urine test for a comprehensive hormone panel. This is the gold standard for mapping hormone metabolism, not just the levels that are in your blood. And so with the Dutch, we can see cortisol patterns across the day. Again, not just a one-time snapshot of the moment the blood was taken. We can see DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, all forms, testosterone and its metabolites, and then how your liver is ultimately breaking these down. Because again, the liver has to clear the excess, and then what does it do with it? And so we'll often catch estrogen dominance, not because estrogen is too high, but because progesterone is too low and the clearance is being impaired. That tells me we need to focus on liver health and a detoxification. The next thing, metabolic markers, blood sugar and insulin. We spoke about this last episode, how fasting glucose is not enough for me to tell what your blood sugar response is or your metabolic health, right? I also need the fasting insulin because it's going to tell me what is your body doing producing insulin, right? And then the hemoglobin A1C, which is a little bit more broad, 3-month kind of blood sugar average. And so again, fasting insulin over 8 to 10 is a major clue for early insulin resistance, even if that A1C is normal, right? So we need more than just one thing. The next thing that's going to be in there is always sex hormones and binding proteins, estradiol, progesterone, total and free testosterone, DHEA, and then sex hormone binding globulin. Something we see all the time in men, low testosterone paired with a high sex hormone binding globulin and an elevated estradiol. That's showing estrogen dominance, not just low T. And those are two different things. Your body's converting to estrogen, not testosterone. Why, right? And so that's where we get to the root cause and figure that out. And then the next thing that we include in there as well is nutrient testing. So the hormones don't just create themselves. Your body needs raw materials to build these things. Things like vitamin B12, folate, vitamin D is the most important. That is basically a pre-hormone. It's not even a vitamin. Magnesium, zinc, ferritin, which is your stored form of iron, selenium, and iodine. And then we like to look at the cortisol awakening response, which is called a CAR. This is a deeper dive into your adrenal health captured through a salivary test. So we'll take a salivary sample first thing in the morning, midday, later in the day, and before bed. And now we have more than just a one-time snapshot. We have a day's worth of what your cortisol is doing. And so we want to see, obviously, elevated in the morning, lower at night. And oftentimes we'll see the influx of that. And that's where we talk about things like adrenal fatigue and burnout. And so some of the big red flags that constantly get missed with conventional testing. And so let's just summarize a few of these that we see often. The normal TSH, but low free T3. Basically, you're still hypothyroid, but you're functioning, right? Low progesterone in women over 35. There's going to be mood issues, irregular cycles, fertility problems. A high nighttime cortisol basically tells us there's going to be insomnia is what we're going to see. This is telling us that adrenal fatigue. Low testosterone in men with the high estrogen, as we just talked about. This is an imbalance. It's not just a low T. And then low vitamin D, which is going to be energy, immunity, thyroid issues that are often missed. So the takeaway here that I want everyone to really, really think about and look at is, if you don't test, you are guessing. You just are. I think I have this. Symptoms can mean multiple different things until you test and find out what's going on. And if you test the wrong things, or if you just say, oh, it's low T, now you're just isolating. You're not really getting answers or a whole picture. And so data drives a lot of what we do. And testing isn't just about finding what's broken. It's about understanding how your body is operating so that we can support it intelligently and appropriately as well. And so, as always, let's get into, man, I'm going to let you take it from here, but let's get into how we tie this together and like some action steps.
Yeah, one thing I do want to know on what you just said, though, is, typically we see a lot of either men or women in a clinic that their primary care physicians, if they see them low in progesterone or they see them low in an area, that they will put blockers in place. And I would highly recommend you speak with Dr. Alessi or a functional medicine doctor before somebody chooses to put you on a blocker, because there is dysregulation in the body that needs to be identified in the root cause. And that's what we're going to be talking about, is balancing those hormones instead of blocking something, you using a drug to block something. That's not what you want to do. And that doesn't naturally operate within the cadence of your body. So that's why it's so important to go to the root cause, because we are big believers in the optimization of your hormones, right? And that's a cadence of whether it's adding additional testosterone to your body or estrogen in some pairing, as well as the natural form through maybe a series of supplementation or stress management, right? So here we go. How do you rebalance the hormones naturally? And this is where we're going to just like tie it all together. So we've talked about what hormones are, how they get disrupted, and how we test them properly, right? All the things. But now comes the part where most people skip over the favor of like a quick fix, right? I just want a quick fix the things. Just give me the band-aid approach, right?
Yeah.
But what does it take to actually rebalance the hormones naturally without the meds and without that band-aid, right? So here we go. So regulate blood sugar levels. Your hormones ride on that glucose wave. We're really, really dialing this in because it's so imperative, right? We just talked about this in a prior episode, but your blood sugar is the entry point to your hormone health. If your glucose and insulin are out of whack, everything downstream from estrogen and testosterone to cortisol and thyroid completely gets thrown off. So here's the game plan here. Build your meals around protein. Like simple as that, right? Aim for 30 grams of protein on your plate at every single meal. You should be looking at 30 grams of protein. How do you measure that though? Might be a question. And typically that's going to take anywhere from 25 to 30% of your plate. A standard chicken breast is going to fall between 25 to 35 grams of protein, 6 ounces to 8 ounces of a chicken breast. That's the measurable, right? So I like chicken because chicken is more that lean protein source that you're going to get the most proteins out of with really like a substantial amount of fat, but healthy fats incorporated into that, right? So then adding in the healthy fats and fibers because they slow the glucose absorption process. So make sure there's a blend of those two as well. And that's through greens. And then you're going to get that through like simple carbohydrates, more complex carbohydrates being like your greens. Asparagus is a great way. You'll have, name a few for me, Dr. Alessi.
I really love
Artichoke,
like sweet potatoes and squash
sweet
are good
potato.
ones. Yeah.
Those are great ways to start incorporating the fats and the fibers into it. So they're going to slow the glucose process. So cut out the snacking every 2 hours. That's really important. Keeping insulin elevated all day is not a good thing, right? So try intermittent fasting. That's a great way to give the gut and the stomach just a resting period. So I typically wait till roughly around 9 or 10 o'clock to eat. And that just gives me that fasting window. So predominantly it's done through that sleeping. So you're going to go to sleep at 9, maybe pick up at 10 the next day. That gives you that 12-hour window. So that is only after your blood sugar is stable and your stress is properly managed. But here's the truth at the end of the day. A ton of patients come through the clinic and women are complaining of just losing that stubborn belly fat, regain that energy they once had, and they just want to sleep better. And that can happen just by stabilizing your insulin at the end of the day. So let's dive into the gut side of things. Now that we're phasing from the insulin, how do you do that appropriately and getting into the gut start in your microbiome? So this is made up of a ton of bacteria within your gut microbiome. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's the mission control center for hormone regulation. So it breaks down. A lot of people say your gut is your first brain. We've said that, right? Your gut is your first brain. It has a lot of neural responses from it, right? It breaks down estrogen and helps clear it from the body. It produces neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. It regulates inflammation, which affects the cortisol and your thyroid. So the starting point from this: remove inflammatory foods, the gluten, the processed dairy, the sugars, the seed oils, all those things. If you can remove them or eliminate them or minimize them, it's going to help you. So add healing foods and supplements like bone broth, glutamine, zinc, and slippery elm. Those are some of the things that you can add in. Support the microbiome. So you want to support it with the good gut bacteria that you can form, right? So use targeted probiotics and prebiotics based on the symptom or testing. So artichoke, it did just like name a few, but artichoke and eggplant, great sources for the kind of that prebiotic, probiotic, and a whole food source along with supplementation. So if just a note, we want to go back. If you missed episode 16, gut health or bust, go back and we break this all down in a very basic way for you. So number 3, support those detox pathways. Eliminate what's hurting you. All right. So hormones have to be stabilized and excreted properly. Your liver, your lymph, and your sweat glands do all the heavy lifting. But in a toxic world, your detox pathways just simply get overwhelmed. So what do? Eat cruciferous vegetables daily. What we just aforementioned, the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, the arugula, great add-ons right from a whole food source. Use targeted supports, NAC, milk thistle, DIM, to help metabolize the estrogen. Sweat it out with a regular sauna session. I'm a big sauna guy. So if you can sweat that out, that helps your cardiovascular system. So sweat it out. Walk. If you're in the Florida sunshine like we are, walk, do those things, right? Drink clean water, filtered water, no BPA lined bottles or tap water loaded with just endocrine disruptors. That'll help. So if your liver's just sluggish at the end of the day, your hormones stay stuck in a circulation longer than they absolutely should. So the recipe here is the estrogen dominance, acne, and fatigue is what accumulates, and that's where you're seeing the exposure of that, right? So sleep and the circadian rhythm. I love diving into this because this is your internal clock and this is your regulator throughout the day. So hormone production follows that rhythm that you're going to have today, but it starts with stress management and sleep. So melatonin, cortisol, growth hormone, they rely on the circadian clock to stay completely in sync. So if you're burning the candle at both ends, scrolling TikTok in your bed, yeah, the hormones are going to suffer. So here's the foundational steps that you can follow that are just easy things that you can plug in, right? 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. Studies have shown if you have a bedtime and a bedtime routine, you're less likely to get dementia. So if you can get yourself in bed, prepare yourself for bed, dementia and Alzheimer's are drastically delayed, if not eliminated. Go to bed and wake up at that same time daily. So then avoid screens. So if you can avoid that blue light blockers, even putting on glasses if you have to be in front of the screen, do that because that's going to help minimize that and regain that melatonin response, which allow you can sleep better. So use those blackout curtains and a sleep mask if you have to. And then getting that natural sunlight in the morning. Most people are rushing in the morning. If you can get up that 15 to 20 minutes early, just get outside, get that indirect sunlight exposure. What that's doing is preparing your body for sleep. So you need to prepare yourself just like you do every day, getting up, getting outside, getting that indirect light exposure. So low melatonin production equals that poor detox, and then you're going to have sluggish hormones, which ultimately are going to lead to sluggish sleep. So then we dive into the stress management side, the stress load, because cortisol really is that gatekeeper, letting things come in and out as they please. And if you're constantly in that stress mental state, you're going to have a thrown off hormonal imbalance. So chronic stress changes your endocrine landscape across the board. So high cortisol equals a suppressed thyroid, estrogen, progesterone imbalance, and testosterone drops. And here's how we calm the system, the functional pieces that we're embedding in, right? Breath work to that box breathing. What the reason why I get in a cold plunge really on a weekly basis is because of that. It forces me to do that breath in that box work breathing, right? The 4-7-8 technique where you're breathing in for 4 seconds, out for 7. Cold water exposure is a great way to work on that. You can start with cold showers and then maybe even do ice baths. Adaptogenetic herbs are a great way too. So like I incorporate a powdered ashwagandha in my diet. I love doing that. And the holy basil of just sprinkling various things on. Herbs are a great tool. Another thing that Dr. Alessi does very routinely that I love is just that prayer journal and that gratitude. So don't underestimate the power of the mindset, of nurturing that mindset. I call it the priming mechanism for how you start your day. So reminder, here we go. Adrenal dysfunction isn't a myth. It's a dysregulated stress response. And it can be a sabotage every hormone in your body. So we want to do this by moving intentionally. Hormones love consistent behavior, smart exercise. Movement is a signal to your body that's safe, capable, and responsive. So I want to dig into what works best. What's going to work best for you? A lot of people just want to aim on, hey, I'm going to get on the treadmill, or I'm going to go walking, or I'm going to do these things. But the reality is you can get a better response from strength training. 2 to 4 times a week boosts testosterone and improves that insulin sensitivity. Zone 2 cardio. It's something that we're working on with some of our patients that are in our challenge, and then some of our clients that have got into the challenge as well. But that zone 2 cardio is really that heart rate threshold. So it's great for mitochondria health and fat burning without spiking your cortisol levels. So increasing that heart rate where you're getting into what we call the blue and the orange zones. So it's making you work. You're slightly uncomfortable, right? Walking daily. People, I think more women probably approach that 10,000 than men. So we want to change that, right? We want to get into it where you're walking daily, where there's consistent effort built into it, whether it's after a meal, really after every meal would be a great way just to get out and walk, get a few thousand steps in. Avoid overtraining. So CrossFit 6 days a week with no recovery, that's going to be hormonal disaster, right? You want to have a recovery window that's between 18 to 24 hours so that you can keep hormonal balance. So movements is that brain release to the right chemical messengers. It's a absolutely free hormone therapy. You can do some basic things. We have some at-home things that we do within our app that you can utilize as part of just right in the middle of your living room. So here we go. Lifestyle wins over the pills. So are you choosing the pills, or are you going to choose the lifestyle piece to it? So hormone replacement therapy, there's a time and a place for it, and we believe in it. But, here's the truth. Your lifestyle factors are really that direct alignment first, right? That's not going to be the end all be all. So although we believe in that, if your gut's a mess, you're stressed out 24/7, you're living on sugar and coffee, you have all these bad habits, that's not going to fix that. So you really need to build the foundation first. So how do you build that foundation? Don't be at war with your hormones. You don't have to fear your body. You just need to understand how it works, give it the inputs it's missing, recreate those habits. Balance isn't a product you buy. It's a byproduct living in alignment.
Oh, that was good. I like a little play on words there, man. Really good. And, as always, man, if you want to learn more about how we help diagnose, reverse, and heal hormone imbalances within our functional medicine programs, please go to alessifunctionalhealth.com, schedule a consultation with myself or one of our doctors, and let's create a personalized plan. We're going to be very specific to your needs, your goals, and your lifestyle and what works. Listeners of this podcast are always going to get exclusive discounts and price reductions on all of our protocols and lab tests.
And as always, if you found value in today's show, please like, subscribe, share this episode with anyone you think needs to hear it. That's how we grow this message and change more lives. And want to get in touch with us or be featured on an episode, email us ask at alessifxhealth.com for any questions that you want answered. And then, as always, visit us if you want to be educated at alessifxhealth.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there and check out our resources page to learn more about our approach to nutrition and cutting-edge therapies.
And as always, thank you again for tuning into Health Decoded, where we break down the science, bust the myths, and help you take control of your health naturally. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember that your health is in your hands.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources and personalized support, visit us at alessifunctionalhealth.com and sign up for our newsletter. To hear your questions answered live on the show, send them to ask at alessifxhealth.com. That's ask at alessifxhealth.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.